Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 160. Tomb of the Scenario. Part 4. Young Hee-won and I passed through the central shopping district of Paradise and arrived at a small hill. The place where the master resided was naturally gorgeous. It was the same with the castle in Peaceland. However, the Lord of Paradise wasn't a normal existence. The constellation demon-like Judge of Fire has wide eyes. The constellation Patron of the Young and the Travelers reveals discomfort. As I moved closer to the hill, the constellations of Eden reacted violently. Patron of the Young and the Travelers. Perhaps a new archangel was paying attention to me. Based on the faint pressure felt from the indirect message, it seemed to be a constellation that was at least on the level of Oriel. It meant 3 angels in Eden was following me. The constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband is looking forward to your rampage. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon wonders about your stigma. The Great Sage, the Equal of Heaven, and the Black Dragon were the same. All 3 regular members of my channel gathered together. I felt pleased, because the Great Sage, the Equal of Heaven, helped with the formation of my nebula last time. The constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband has snorted and let out snot. It was hard to believe from the indirect messages that this was the Great Sage, the Equal of Heaven. In fact, did he actually write the indirect messages? For example, there was the clone I saw. Either way, if Secretive Plotter came, then all 4 of the early people would be gathered. The constellation Secretive Plotter is watching the situation with interested eyes. Scarily enough, the last one came as I was thinking about him. Secretive Plotter. I wasn't able to confirm his face at the constellation banquet. It was clear that he was a narrative-grade constellation, but no matter how I thought about it, I couldn't remember his modifier. I suddenly had doubts. Was it possible this strong presence didn't appear in the original novel? Many constellations are paying attention to your actions. We are here. Young Hee-won spoke, and I stopped at the road up to the hill. There was a white brick house on top of the hill. A white house on the hill. I didn't know the intentions behind it, but the taste was unique. I'll wait here. Call me if anything happens. I nodded, but I already knew that Young Hee-won wouldn't run right away because I called her. In Paradise, there was no one who could win again the Paradise Master. I climbed up along the road and a shadow appeared near the brick house. A man with a beautiful appearance stood there, as if he had been carved into a sculpture. Oh, you're here. If I didn't have fourth wall, I would have stopped breathing from his beauty. Yu Jonghyuk was also handsome, but this person's appearance couldn't be described. It was a demonic beauty. I'm sorry, but please wait a moment. These guys were shy around strangers. The man was watering the flowers on the hill. The flowers were blooming towards the air. Their petals were wide open, like they were trying to swallow the sky, but they were just small flowers. I knew the name of the flower. The perpetual motion. It was a collective term for things that worked forever without being supplied energy sources from outside, but here it was merely the name of a flower. The man asked, "Do you know this flower?" New flowers bloom almost every day. You have great knowledge. It was naturally because I read Ways of Survival. The flowers of paradise, the perpetual motion. The flower, which only grew on this hill, bloomed at dawn and yielded fruit at night. The fruit fell before dawn and would be used as fertilizer to grow more flowers. Perpetual motion was a flower that repeated forever. The man said this flower was very lovely. I never get tired looking at them. Their vitality is truly amazing. However, the name is wrong. If it was really perpetual motion, the flower should grow well without water. It is such a beautiful flower, but you can only saw the flaws? The man laughed and looked at me. I haven't introduced myself. I am the Master of Paradise, Reinheit von Gerba. I knew him well. He was one of the most famous 10 evils in Ways of Survival. Reinheit smiled. Nice to meet you, Kim Dokja. As expected, he already knew who I was. The exclusive skill character list is activated. There is too much information about this person. Character list is converted to character summary list. Plus. Character list summary. Character, Reinheit von Gerba. Private attribute, Demon Marquis, Legend, one who pursues an impossible dream, Hero. Exclusive skill, Demon's Eyes LV10, Advanced Weapons Training, Advanced Mental Barrier LV10. Stigma, Master of Paradise LV10. Total stats, Physique LV99, Strength LV99, Agility LV99, Magic Power LV99. Asterisk 2 ND in the Dark Castle rankings. Plus. It was truly great. His overall stats had exceeded the limits of the scenario, and almost every skill had reached the maximum. Maybe Reinheit was the limit of this scenario. I stared at him and Reinheit clapped. It is difficult when you are burning with too much hostility. The perpetual motion will be broken. I asked, why did you call me? I was wondering about the rumors. You have caused a loud buzz the moment you entered this scenario. Reinheit was different from the 10 evils I had met so far. If Gong Pildu and Li Sielwa were growing into the 10 evils, Reinheit was already near completion. A being like you entering the scenario is a threat to me. The second-ranked Demon Marquis is too humble. You know about that? Your preliminary investigation is thorough. His killing intent suddenly sprang out. Was he going to ambush me now? I hesitated. I didn't think I could beat or kill him. It wouldn't be an easy fight. The outcome couldn't be guaranteed. Yet the reason for my hesitation. He said, in my world, Dark Castle was the 34th scenario. Perhaps it was because I saw his paradise. Reinheit watched the scenery of the fortress below the hill. I remember the first time I came here 800 years ago. At the time, there was nothing on the plains. Only the rankings were given. The incarnations were busy hunting and killing each other, despite there being nothing in the scenario. I imagined them first falling on the plains. All beings in Dark Castle evolved into demons over time. The first ones to enter Dark Castle weren't demons from the beginning. They ascended to a higher species in order to become stronger. In a situation with no time limits or failure conditions, they focused only on getting a higher ranking. Endless war and slaughter. It is the only thing that the incarnations could do when the story had disappeared. The disappearance of the scenario wasn't a happy thing. Whether it was a constellation or an incarnation, every being eventually needed a story. However, Reinheit didn't agree with this. He was tired of being a toy in someone's scenario, and no longer wanted to be a slave to the scenario. Thus, I created Paradise. I knew Reinheit was sincere. The Dakibis called us a tomb, but not me. I became a blood-stained demon after many years, but I believe real life can only bloom after the scenario has disappeared. The words were filled with deep emotions. I might have been caught if I hadn't read the original novel. The purest evil. That was what Yu Zhonghyuk called Reinheit. Constellation Kim Dokja. You want to go to the next scenario? That's right. Stop. Such a thing doesn't exist. As expected, this was what he wanted. I've lived for 800 years, and it isn't the first time I've seen someone like you. Numerous strong people have found hidden scenarios, but none have cleared Dark Castle. Everyone becomes desperate and frustrated by the void of this scenario. Reinhardt continued speaking, I don't want you to be like them. What do you want? Constellation Kim Dokja. Please protect Paradise with me. I need your help. I stood silently by his side and touched the petals of the perpetual motion. Before the surprised Reinheit could stop me, the trembling flower quickly shriveled and the fruit fell. The fallen fruit suddenly became rotten and rolled down the hillside. The guard passing by saw it but didn't pay much attention. It was because they had no intention of cutting out the rotten part of Paradise. Yuug, release me. It is wrong. I didn't steal anything. The criminals of Paradise were being transported to the underground area below the hill. I knew where they were being dragged. Some constellations are laughing unpleasantly. Just as permanent institutions didn't exist, paradise wasn't free. They would probably become paradise's fertilizer. It was just like the rotten fruit became the plant's fertilizers. A small earthquake occurred deep underground. It seemed to be the cry of a terrible monster. I told him, Reinheit, there is no paradise. A permanent institution can't exist. Reinheit didn't say anything. It looked like he was trying to test me. However, he would soon regret it. Give me the next scenario. A look of panic appeared in Reinheit's eyes for the first time. I know that you found it 700 years ago. To be exact, you and a few strong people have found it. How do you? You have even challenged the scenario. Isn't that right? However, you failed and survived by yourself. Then this paradise was made. I didn't miss the trembling in his fingertips as he looked after the petals. He said he created this place to help people find life. It wasn't true. This was just a refuge for an impossible scenario. All the scenarios of the star stream exist for stimulation. There is no stimulation in paradise. Everything is too peaceful. Don't believe that the deal with the Dakibi will last forever. The star stream will never allow this space to exist for a long time. Reinheit was quiet for a while, before slowly opening his mouth. Constellation Kim Dokja. What else do you know? His tone had changed. A faint but scary energy was flowing from him. His attitude towards me had changed from this conversation. It changed from a helper he was anticipating to an enemy more threatening than anyone else. All of it, even things you don't know. I saw a dark cloud coming from afar. In such a situation, there was no chance of a cloud coming in. Thus, this rain cloud was definitely under the direction of the Dakibis. They were sitting around and watching everything, even if they weren't interfering. It was because this world was a scenario even without a scenario. I sighed lightly and prepared for the end of the tragedy. Reinheit. You will die and paradise will fall. Chapter 161. Tomb of the Scenario. Part 5. I will die and paradise will be destroyed? After Kim Dokja left, Reinheit looked down the hill with a blank expression. He had laughed when he first heard the words. However, he had to stop laughing when Kim Dokja's expression didn't change. Reinheit was annoyed. Kim Dokja might be a constellation, but this was crossing the line. He wasn't the strongest in the star stream just because he was a constellation. It wasn't uncommon for the 72 demon kings to devour fledgling constellations in the star stream. In addition, Kim Dokja was only a half constellation. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon is warning you not to ignore the words of Kim Dokja. That's why Reinheit was surprised when the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon came out to defend Kim Dokja. Who was the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon? He was the most famous of the absolute evil system that even the 72 demon kings didn't want to get tangled up in. Reinheit looked at the scenery below the hill and naturally became nervous. Thus, he acted like he wasn't. Paradise won't perish. Reinheit was old but still alive. He had been watching this place alone for 700 years. Thus, this place would be fine in the future. This scenario might be full of poisonous people, but he wouldn't lose if he fought in paradise. Rather, the dangerous thing. Kim Dokja didn't yet know how terrible the stories that entered Dark Castle were. The rotten fruit of perpetual motion fell off and Reinheit disappeared. I didn't know what would happen if a battle took place on the spot, but fortunately, Reinheit didn't attack. It was obviously that paradise would be turned upside down if we fought here. Of course, I had no intention of fighting. Things would be smoother if I defeated Reinheit here, but I would be badly damaged, and the incarnations of paradise would develop a grudge against me. I couldn't let that happen. If paradise collapsed, it must be due to the anger of paradise itself, not an external enemy. The incarnations would end up in the same predicament if I acted without revealing what was wrong. Is it over? Yes. Young Hee-won was waiting for me below the hill. She still had an unclear expression. Maybe she was struggling with her loyalty to me and the comfort of paradise. I decided to relieve a bit of her worries. Hee-won SSI. Do you want to go shopping for a while? We walked along the street. Noise came from the bustling shopping district. It has been a while since I've walked like this. Me too. As the awkward silence continued, Young Hee-won decided to speak first. Do you have any questions for me? What do you want me to ask? I know what she wanted me to ask. However, there were some things I didn't ask, because I already knew the answer. My favorite color or favorite food, Young Hee-won replied. Those are questions that wouldn't be asked even in blind dates. Has Dr. SSI been on a blind date? I ignored the slight hit to my pride and asked, are you disregarding me? No, it just doesn't seem like Dr. SSI's style. I feel like you would want a fateful meeting. I felt like I had unexpectedly been stung. In fact, I had never been on a blind date. Young Hee-won continued speaking. We have never talked about our past before. Aren't you curious? How did you live before and where did you go to school? I quietly listened to her. What was your phone number and where did you live? In addition, the scenery passed and Young Hee-won's voice gradually died down. As she was speaking, she would have discovered it. Maybe it had been too long to tell such a story. The area she lived would have been destroyed and those who remembered her history probably wouldn't be alive. These things happened to us in just a few months. Young Hee-won was silent for a long time before wondering, even if we go back, it won't be the same soul, right? It won't. At the end of the 10th scenario, Soul Dome would be broken and the incarnations liberated. Still, this was just the beginning of another hell. It meant the scenarios that were limited to the capital city domes would expand to the whole world. Then, why do we have to continue with the scenario? None of the things we knew are still remaining. There is no going back. This was why she wanted to stay in paradise. The woman from Gumho Station, Pink Kid Kim Young-pal. Paradise was the place where lost people came. Young Hee-won's head hung down. I opened my mouth while deliberately not staring at her face. Hee-won SSI is a good sword. Small breathing sounds could be heard. You are calmer in front of the fire than any of us. In particular, you are sensitive to the tyranny of the strong. I slowly started the story that I knew. Just because Young Hee-won didn't appear in the original novel didn't mean I didn't know her. It made me work harder to read her. You always fought at the head of the party and never complained about how difficult it was. Young Hee-won listened to me with her mouth shut. I continued speaking. You didn't tell anyone when you were hurt, and even if there was something suspicious, you chose to believe in that person. I thought of Young Hee-won. The Young Hee-won who trusted me, despite my suspicious actions. The Young Hee-won who fought for me at Gumho Station. You might distrust humans more than anyone else, but you are actually filled with affection. You are the first to come running when our party is in danger. Young Hee-won was the one who desperately searched for the party when the Dakibi separated them. Young Hee-won always joked around, but she was careful to make sure we wouldn't be offended by a little joke. If so, don't I know a bit about Young Hee-won SSI? Young Hee-won's head remained lowered as she spoke. I'm not like that. This is the Young Hee-won that I see. Young Hee-won carefully avoided my gaze. No one has ever told me that. Dr. SSI would be good at blind dates. By the way, why are you saying this all of a sudden? Young Hee-won looked up at me and smiled faintly, as if nothing had happened. It wasn't a moment where she should smile. This is the Young Hee-won SSI that I saw because you continued the scenario. Young Hee-won's lips, which had been halfway open, stopped. That's why I believe you should continue the scenario. There was no place for us to go back. There might not be a place for us to stay. Still, at least the story was continuing. As long as the story continued, there were more things that we could barely see. Young Hee-won carefully opened her mouth. I don't understand because it is too hard. I told you before. I didn't do well in school. I'm not saying this in the hope that Hewan will act. Hewan should live according to your own way. I opened the exchange while talking. The item that you commissioned to be made has arrived. The timing was good. The item that I sent to be produced had come. It was made from the bone of the fire dragon, the heart of a demon, and the nucleus of some monsters. It was an item that only young Hewan could use. In the original novel, only the 3 original judges were able to use the item. I paid 100,000 coins for it to be produced and received the item. You have given this sword of judgment to young Hewan. The surprised young Hewan accepted the sword. This? Didn't we decide to go shopping together? This is my gift. Isn't your old sword broken? I don't deserve this. I slowly shook my head. Nope, only Hewan is eligible for this sword. Kim Dokja has a really bad personality. Are you actually going to leave like this? We moved away from paradise. Han Soo-young kept looking back as she spoke. I replied without looking back. The things here are finished. What is finished? If it went according to the original novel, paradise will probably be destroyed. The peace of the incarnations would be ruthlessly broken. Should I stop it? I couldn't do that. This scenario would never end as long as paradise existed. Paradise isn't for me to get involved in. Ah, you are leaving it to the original flow of the novel. Why can't you do it yourself? Rian Height is too hard to catch right now, and I will gain a bad story if I do beat him. He has too many supporters. Stories didn't only have good effects. Some stories would cause your strength to drop. Han Soo-young knew this, and bit her lips. Well, it is like this. Then what about the mental state of the companions left behind? They should get some rest. What? Rest? Tell me honestly. Aren't you actually angry? You have done a good job, but they fell for a demon they met for the first time. In particular, Young Hee-won. Young Hee-won deserves it. It has been hard for her so far. Han Soo-young scoffed. Don't make me laugh. Don't you know what you have done? Paradise will soon perish. She received the sword and likes you without knowing anything. She chose it herself, so she should be responsible for herself. You demon. Some wounds destroyed us, but some made us stronger. It couldn't be helped, even if I was called a demon. This was my path. Han Soo-young grumbled for a long time before suddenly saying. By the way, Kim Dokja. Why? Why are you taking me? You will help me. Han Soo-young bit her lips and suddenly summoned her clones. Their faces seemed to resemble me. This reminded me that she could change the faces of her clones. What are you doing? Training. It was more like a one-sided assault than training. Furthermore, she focused on hitting a place that was extremely painful. Han Soo-young beat me up for a long time before asking, what are you going to do now? I'll set aside the scenario for 3 or 4 days and gather stories while searching for hidden pieces. Han Soo-young smiled at the words hidden pieces. Why? Aren't you the type to be focused on the main scenario? This time I will leave it to other people. It has been hard for me to do it alone up to now. When I thought about it, I tried too hard to do it alone. That jerk, Yu Jong-hyuk, seemed to be working hard, but he wasn't helpful at important moments. It would have ended at the disaster of floods or Peaceland if I hadn't helped. As I was working hard on the scenarios, he went around finding hidden pieces. Thus, it was time for him to work properly. I smiled and said, we will now pretend to be the regressor.